G'day everyone. Well, what a massive announcement we've just had in the last couple of hours. I've just seen the reports coming in. I might just put this volume up just a little bit, just so we can get a bit hotter. Yeah, I've just seen the announcement of the new Sony a7RIII that's just been released. Everyone was wondering what sort of camera it was actually going to be, but they've just announced now what it actually is. Whether there's still going to be an A7S model of this released yet is still we're still waiting to be seen. But the new model that's just been released today is the new a7RIII, and I thought I'd take you all through it. The descriptions or the actual specifications, what the camera is, and I'll talk to you about what I think about that as well. We can also chime in on the chat too, guys, because I'd love to know what your opinion is about this camera as well, whether it interests you, if you think it's been a massive upgrade, or if you thought that they'd left something out, or whether you think it meets exactly what you'd like in this sort of camera. So, well, let's go through. Let me just put into the chat just to say hi, everyone. We've got Ben here at the moment. So say hi if you actually are in the chat now, just so we can all have a chat together. But massive announcement. It's probably not what I thought. I actually thought there was going to be a new A7S III would have been released first before this, or even the A7RIII I thought might be coming out before this. But I think that this new camera they've released is answering the Nikon the D850 that's just come out. So I think basically Sony have answered that camera particularly. So yeah, I think that's great. We've got a stack now starting to come in. We've got Vic saying good morning. It's 7:22 in the evening here, Vic. B&B Films. I'm doing my video about the a7RIII now. David Johnson's just said hi. Simon has also said it definitely interests him. I'll be pre-ordering for sure. Jordan says hi, everyone. Rodder says hi. So yeah, have a good chat, guys. I will bring this chat comment up and we can have a talk about this as the comments go. So I will give a little bit of time at the end of this where we can go through all this together and have a chat. Hi, Melissa, how are you? So the interesting thing is too, this is an unusual time for me to be talking, so I'm probably going to get some other people that usually can't catch my live chats, particularly from Europe and places like that, the UK and Germany, wherever that you are from over there. So it's going to be great to talk to you guys as well. Normally I'm talking in the morning here or lunchtime, which means a lot of you people from Europe don't get these live chats. So it'll be great to see you guys and great to have a chat. So let's go over and have a look. Keep asking your questions because I will come back to that with you and we'll have a look at these all together. So I'm going to switch over to the page that I'm going to look at. So I'm going to start off looking at the actual site, which seemed to be good, which was Sony Rumors have released the specifications for this camera itself. And basically, they're saying that the a7RIII has just been announced, and it is a 42.4 megapixel camera, obviously mirrorless like their other cameras, and it's basically it's like a mini A9 in most ways, although the body hasn't changed at all, they're saying, from the a7R II. The A9's body is a little bit different. I have the a7R II and the A9, and the A9 body is definitely a little bit more bulkier than what the a7R II is. So that's interesting that they're using the exact same body. But the interesting thing is that they're fitting extra things inside that body, which is obviously the joystick. They're also doing the dual card slots, which I think is an amazing thing to actually have on that as well. The sensor they're saying is the same sensor, but we'll start to look through this in the order that they've got it on this side, and I'll sort of talk to you about that. And then, like I said, if you've got any questions, please leave them in the live discussion now, because I'll bring that up later and we can have a talk about all those as well. They're saying that the camera features essentially the same body as the a7R II, but Sony has found room for the focus point selection, so they have added the joystick, which is great. They've put that on there. Let me just drag this out the way so you can see what's going on. So they have put the joystick on there. They've also put the AF on button on there and the twin card slots. And also even a flash sync socket has been added as well. So it's incredible. I can't believe they've added all that without making the body larger. I just hope that doesn't affect the heating, overheating, because I know with the bigger the body, you would think that there'd be less heating involved. So I'm just hoping that because they haven't made that body larger, I'm hoping that it doesn't affect that at all, seeing they're cramming more stuff inside that body, but we'll wait to see. I haven't had any overheating issues, so I'm not worried about that either. But I know some people are going to be saying that it could be an issue. What else is saying? So speed. So they're saying the speed of this sensor, it's the same 42.4 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor, but they've done a series of hardware and processing changes basically to get more out of that sensor. So clearly, like I've said to you all along, guys, the ones that are following me, I've said there's no issue at all, even with the old a7RIII sensor. That is an amazing sensor, and I'm still really happy with it. So that doesn't bother me at all in the fact that they're keeping this same sensor, but they have improved it, because when we start to go through this, you'll see that the dynamic range has been improved a lot, particularly if you're shooting continuous shooting and things like that. So we'll talk about that shortly. It's got a faster Bion Z processor along with front-end LSI, so obviously they've increased that. So you're probably not going to have to wait to look at the images like you did. It might be the difference, say, between having the a6-300 and the a6-500. I've noticed there's a massive difference in how you can review images and stuff like that from the a6-500 as against the a6-300. So that's a really good feature if they have up that LSI processor as well, which is great. And perhaps because it's got this faster processor, that may also help with the heat as well, because they probably are tweaking this. So this may also help to keep the camera a lot cooler, because like I said, they haven't changed the body at all in that camera as well. This is in conjunction with a redesigned low vibration shutter mechanism. So they're saying now it will be a lot better. There's less vibration, which can matter if you're doing things like landscape and things like that, where any vibration can actually affect the image that you're actually looking at. So to have a shutter mechanism that does have less vibrations, it will, if you're in critical scenarios where you want the least amount of shutter shock that the camera will give you, they've obviously improved that as well. I know that used to be a big issue, particularly with the original a7R. The shutter shock was very bad in that one, and that caused a lot of issues. So again, they've improved that even over the a7R2, which is also a great feature as well. They're saying that it can shoot 10 frames per second, which when you think about it, that the resolution that this is throwing out, and that's giving you 10 frames per second, and if you've got the a6-500 live view style, which they're saying you have here, that is going to be a really amazing feature, because that was things that sometimes annoyed me with the a7R2 was waiting for that image to appear on the back of the screen, the LCD, if you were shooting it in a fast scenario like weddings and stuff. So that really could be a bit of a great light at the end of the tunnel if you don't have to wait any longer. Also, you know, sometimes you wanted to access the menu and you could still be locked out if you were shooting multiple images. Well, if they've increased this front side bus so much that you no longer have to wait for that, like you get with the a6-500, well, that will make this camera very usable as compared to the older camera. Again, these are all little features that I think would help you improve using that camera against the old one. And you've got continuous shooting at up to 8 frames per second. And to be honest, you're very rarely going to be shooting any more than that. I mean, I very rarely shoot fast frames per second, even with the a7R2. I think it's 5 that it gives me at the moment. I don't do that because the file sizes are so large that I don't want to be taking that many images with this type of camera. If I do that with the A9, well, that's a bit different because they're only 20 megapixel file sizes. So to have that where you're shooting 10 frames per second, personally, I would probably not be doing that very often. I'll be using something like the A9 or the a6-500, but it is there if you want to have that ability to shoot fast frame rates. It could also be good too if you're shooting in Super 35mm mode to get that around about that 19 megapixel file size. Well, then that could be really interesting to shoot that way. If you did want to use this in its APS-C mode, well then that's great because you have got a very fast shutter, which would be great. Great for if you're doing flash, obviously, because it will do 10 frames per second with flash. Remember, you need mechanical shutter to be using flash. So to have that feature on this camera could be a really big advantage as compared to the a7R2. Or even the A9, for instance, if you want to use that with flash, it's still 5 frames per second. So to have 10 frames per second on this is a really good feature for studio work. So again, this may be a much better studio camera than what the Sony A9 is, for instance. That's still where I use my a7R II now in studio. It's saying also that Sony says the faster processing will give more tenacious subject tracking on AF. That's because of that new processor anymore. And I think I read further down that it's about 2 times faster somewhere than what the a7R II is. Now, what I've said to people that watch my YouTube channel, it's very hard to go back from my A9 to shooting with the a7R II because of the focus. So to have almost a similar focus on the a7R II would make this a much more usable camera than what using, say, the a7R is at the moment, the a7R II is at the moment. So that is a big difference now in the fact that now you've got the focusing from the A9. It's not going to be, I don't think it is going to be as good, and I think I've read there that Sony have already admitted that it's still not in the same realm as the A9, but it's still going to be way better than what it is at the moment for using the a7R II, which could be the difference between this being a fantastic wedding camera or just being an average wedding camera. So if it has got similar focus to what the A9 is, well, it is going to be an amazing wedding camera. What's it saying? Continuous shooting bursts can last for 87 compressed or 28 uncompressed images. That's raw files. So obviously the buffer is very big in this camera when you think about the file size, and that's probably all you will ever need. This is not a sports camera, but you can shoot 87 compressed raw files in a row. Sony's claiming 16 stops of dynamic range. Now I just noticed before I saw Gary Fong and he was saying it's 16-bit, but it looks like it's 16 stops, but it looks like it's 15 stops Sony are saying of dynamic range, and it's 14-bit raw capture across more of its shooting modes. I know there was issues before when you were shooting continuous shooting and also shooting with the E-shutter, it dropped as well. So they're saying that some of these now will shoot still in 14-bit raw, so that is a big advantage as well. It still drops to 12-bit though if you're shooting 10 frames per second, so that is a thing that you have to consider. But I do that on the A9, and to be totally honest with you, I have not noticed any difference with the dynamic range at all, so I wouldn't have an issue with shooting that at all. I shoot all the time fast like that on the A9. I actually did it on Monday night when I went to a dance concert that I shot that, and I was shooting the 20 frames per second, and the raw image files are fantastic, and that was also shooting at 12-bit as well. They're also saying, so although the Mark III doesn't have the super high throughput of the stacked CMOS design that we saw in the A9, Sony says the faster processing will give more tenacious subject eye tracking and IAF, obviously, than existing A7R models, even if it's not expected to live up the A9 standards. So again, we're going to have to wait to see how that actually works. I mean, I can tell you, I'm also going to do a video on the A9 because I've been using it more and more now, and honestly, I honestly think that's the best camera. It's definitely the best camera that I've ever used, and I still think now that it would be the best camera in the world at the moment. That is just an amazing camera, the A9. Now, if the a7R II has similar features to that, a7R III I should say, if the a7R III has similar features to that, that is going to be just an amazing wedding camera, because that's the only time where I've noticed if it's in low light scenarios, you can get around it if you use fast glass, but the focusing does struggle, and you notice that more compared to, say, something like the A9, which is just groundbreaking. And like I said, after I've used that, I used that with jumping and everything yesterday, and it just tracked the dancers as they came in. And I didn't even have to try and pre-focus to where those dancers were. I just moved the camera, and basically it picked them up within a second, and I had them jumping in midair. I could never do that before with especially the a7R II. So now the a7R III, you could probably do that as well. So, you know, again, that's just an amazing feature. So let's go down. They're saying stable high resolution. They're saying basically it's the same as the other sensor that the camera had. They've just put some new shutter capabilities in this mechanism. This is designed to both have fast and low vibration. It's saying low shutter shock, which I said it used to be an issue with the first A7R, but now they've got rid of that with the A7R2. So that's a really good thing as well. And they're also saying all the capabilities are also for video shooting too, and I wish they'd put that in the A9. For some reason, they haven't put these features in the A9. I'm hoping it comes in with a firmware upgrade. Let's hope, guys, that have bought the A9. Ergonomics. They're saying although the body is essentially the A7R2, the Mark II gains some of the ergonomic improvements of the A9. Well, it looks like it's got nearly all of them because it has the AF on button, it's got the joystick, it's got the multi-controller for positioning the AF points, and it's got the same touchscreen that have for the A9. But they're giving you the ability to use that touchscreen when you bring it up to your eye. You can't do that with the A9 for some reason. I don't know why they don't allow that, but if you use the EVF and you try and use your thumb on the touchscreen, it doesn't work. But they're saying it will work with this camera. So again, I'm hoping that's something that they bring in the A9. Let me just go back quickly and I'll have a look at some of the questions that you guys might want to say if you've asked any yet. Simon has said that the A9 definitely interesting. He's going to pre-order. Most people are just saying hi at this stage. David Johnson said it's on the Sony's official website now. I haven't even looked because I was just in a wedding meeting, guys. So I've actually just got out of a wedding meeting and I saw this release. So I thought I'd pop in straight away and talk to you guys all about it. What else have we got? Looks like the movie button is the same as the A9. Michael said, selling my A7R2, it's worth the upgrade. That's good to see, Michael. B&B Film said, I wish they had 4K 60. I know that's an issue that I think they're going to save that for the A7S III or the A7RIII, I think possibly could have that B&B Film, so we'll have to wait. Ben said, I'll give it 6 weeks till you order one. I love it. B&B Film said, me too, but that will be the A7S III he's talking about buying. So let's go back to this. Again, we'll keep going. I'll come back to questions, guys. Keep firing them away if you have any. Ergonomics we've just been through. Video. Now, this is interesting because they're saying in here that as with the predecessor, the A7 Mark III can shoot UHD 4K. So it's got the same 4K that obviously it had before. But they're saying here that basically it's using a similar sensor, I think, to what the A6RIII does in the fact that I think it's a 6K pixel sensor, I think, because it's saying it's 5176 by 2924 and it's down samples it to produce the 4K UHD footage. So it's probably going to give a very similar result as what the A9 does. And the interesting thing is that the A9, I think, is by far Sony's best video camera. And that's why I can't understand why they haven't given you picture profiles in that camera. But the video the output that comes out of that camera is stunning. I mean, it is stunning. I think it's even better than the A6500. It's just gorgeous, incredibly sharp, beautiful. The autofocus is amazing as well. So if they're matching that type of setup with the A7R III, this is going to be a great video camera. So I can't wait to see what they're going to have in the A7S III. Or the A9S, whatever they're going to call that camera. So that's going to be really interesting to see what they say there. Sony says the image quality of both types of footage is improved, but the quality differential between full frame and Super 35 modes will remain. So in other words, to get the best out of this camera, you have to shoot Super 35. And I never had an issue doing that anyway. Super 35 on the A7R2 is much cleaner than shooting full frame. So if you do want to get the best out of your A7R2, and obviously this camera as well, you have to shoot Super 35. So that's an interesting thing as well that they're saying there too. Now another great thing, and they've done this obviously to compete with the GH5, they've added hybrid log gamma, so they're giving that feature to enable your HDR features on new televisions, so you can now do that. So it will shoot HLG footage, and it also has the display assist, which is great too, because there's no point having these great features like HGL or S-Log3 if you can't see what the image looks like on the actual camera, because it's very hard to judge your exposure. Well, this camera is giving you the ability to put that into the camera so you can see it correct on the camera. So yes, you are shooting HLG footage, and also S-Log3, but you will get a correct sort of looking image on the back of your camera. So that is a great feature to have, and it's something that I love about my GH5, that you can get these correct gammas in them as well. I know you can do that with the a6-500 too, but yeah, that is a great feature too. And I think clearly as time goes on, I know a lot of people are actually shooting with the Panasonic. They're actually saying to shoot HLG footage as your normal profile, because it is such a good profile, giving you such a big dynamic range. It's just a little bit hard to edit at the moment, so I'm not sure how the footage will be here, whether it's just if it's going to be just as hard to edit as the HLG footage from the Panasonic. So that's going to be interesting to see. But it does give you a much wider gamut, and it is really nice and clean. And if you're going to future-proof things, remember, we're only now just starting to shoot in 4K, but there are now more and more televisions that are coming out that will give you these high dynamic range HLG footage on TVs. So it is a feature now where you're future-proofing your camera. So it is another good feature that Sony, again, are putting something in that is basically leading in the market like what the Panasonic's got, which is great. What else they're saying? That, yeah, you get your corrective preview while shooting in log mode. What else is it saying? The a7RIII also gains 1080p 120 and 100 in PAL mode. So they're giving you basically the same video features that the A9 has. And like I said, that feature is fantastic. The 1080p 120 on the A9 is outstanding. So you're getting that same frames per second and slow motion on the a7RIII. This is going to be a really good video camera, guys, and I think don't underestimate this. I use my a7RIII all the time for video, and this is much better. Like I said, I now can't wait to see what they're going to give us in the a7S III. What else? Let's keep going because there's plenty to go through here. What else it's saying? Sony has developed since the launch, well, they're talking about that 1080p Sony has developed since the launch of the Mark II, along with the fast and slow motion modes that stem from this feature. It also shoots XAVC proxy, with the camera capturing both high quality and small. So it's giving you proxy files as well. If you're dealing with a slow computer system, you're going to be able to have a proxy file as well as a high-res file, which is really good too. What else we've got? Multi-shoot. Now, this is interesting because this is something that Pentax have, and it's also something that Olympus has as well. It gives you the ability to shoot 4 separate files. Now, the only difference is with this camera, it's not putting it together in the actual camera itself. It's going to give you 4 files. Now, they're saying then that you have to use software to put these 4 files back later on. But once you do that, you're going to have amazing resolution, you're still going to have the same file size, but you're going to have amazing detail because it's only dealing with basically shooting a channel at a time. But remember, this has to be done for special purposes, because you can't have anything that's moving in this, because anything that's moving is going to throw it out, because remember, you're taking 4 separate shots. And the interesting thing is with this, with the 4 separate shots, they're saying that you have to wait 0.5, 1 or 2 seconds between them. So that's why I'm saying you can't use this for something that's moving. But if you were shooting something in a controlled environment where nothing's moving, if you were doing landscapes or something and you didn't have anything moving in it, that could make an amazing file. So that's another thing. But again, it's just something that they're giving us for no extra cost. Other features. They're saying here that as well as all of these, there are a series of smaller additions. For the a7RIII also gains an anti-flicker mode. Now this is also really good because I know Canons have this feature as well, that you can enable the flicker mode if you're dealing with strange lighting. And if you put this on, what it's going to do, it's only going to take a photo at the brightest point of when that light flickers. So it should eliminate any of this banding that you have, which again is a really nice feature that they're adding into this camera. Like I said, Canons have this feature. I think they're the only ones that have it at the moment, the anti-flicker, but this new camera is going to have that as well. What else have we got? They're saying, yeah, that it stops artificial strobing of artificial lights and shoots at peak intensity to avoid dark or inconsistent exposed photos. And that can affect you even with mechanical shutter as well as having your electronic shutter as well. Obviously, it can be worse with the electronic shutter, but it's definitely can even show up sometimes a mechanical shutter if your light is really bad and it's really flickering a bit strange. It's also got 2 twin USB sockets, which is another great feature that they haven't put on the A9. It's got USB 3.1 Type-C and it's also got micro USB port as well, and you can use these for charging at the same time, so you can actually be charging your camera as you're using it with obviously an external battery, so that's great as well. And for somehow they've also managed to fit the new battery, the A9 battery, into this camera as well. But you'll need a different grip. Obviously, you'll have to buy a new grip, so you won't be able to use the old grip that you've got with the a7RIII. So you are going to have to buy a a7RIII new battery grip. They're selling it should be available from the last day of November, and it's recommended price of $3,199. So basically the same price that it was when the original a7RIII came out, which I think is, you know, a really great thing. So they're not basically overcharging for this camera at all. So I think there's a couple of things here. Clearly, a lot of people will say, well, why would I buy the A9? Well, the A9 is still going to be more of a sports camera. It's still going to have, I believe, better focusing. I think this only has 300 points, whereas the A9, I think, has 600 odd points. So it's not going to have as many focus points as what the A9 has. It also hasn't got the same sensor. So there may be an issue with this one if you're using electronic shutter with images that will basically move and bend. If you're trying to, say, do a golf swing, it may bend the stick, because I think it probably will have a little bit more rolling shutter than what the A9 has. But again, we're going to have to wait to see in that regard. They may have improved other areas that stops that. But I think that's probably what's going to be the main difference between the two of them. Yes, this does have silent shutter, but I don't think it's going to be as good as what the A9 silent shutter is, in the fact that it will stop a golf swing without that rolling shutter, because that's what that sensor's designed for. It's much quicker, and you're going to need that if you're going to use that. But in other areas, this is going to be amazing in itself. Like I said, it's got better USB. You've got the dual card slots now that's the same as the A9. You've got the same battery as the A9. I did a wedding on the weekend, and I used one battery for the whole day, and I took over 1,000 images. It's incredible. So that's a big game changer in itself as well. So I think overall, I think that Sony have answered the Nikon D850 looking at what these specifications are, and I think they had to. They've also increased the video modes of this camera too, so they've given all of us an option to shoot better video with this camera than what we had before. It's got the touch screen now, that the same touch screen as what the a6500 has, in the fact that you can use it while you're using the EVF. So they're great features as well. Really seems like a great camera, guys. So I'm going to open it up to questions, because I'd love to know what you guys think about this, and whether you think that it's met everything that you thought that Sony would have done, or whether you think it could have added something else. So let's go and see what people are saying. And I'll talk about whether I'll upgrade in a moment, that we'll discuss at the end as well. Ben has said, I'll give you 6 weeks until you order one. Michael said, BMS Films, me too, he's going to order, obviously, but he's also thinking about the a7S III. Jordan said, you have previously said you wouldn't change your a7R II. Is this enough for you to upgrade? Well, I'm going to answer that now. Not at this stage, Jordan. I'm going to keep my a7R II at this stage. I'm more interested to see what they bring out for a new a6-700, or potentially the a9S. But at this stage, I'm quite comfortable with what I'm shooting. I don't think I will be upgrading to this. But if I didn't have the a7R II, I would buy this in a heartbeat. Because remember, when I'm doing my weddings, 90% of my shots now are doing it with the A9. And to be honest, for me, most of my shooting is ample shooting with the A9. I can do 90% of my work with that. But the 10% that I will do, the bridal formals, where I want to perhaps blow that up to a massive size, if the dynamic range is really important, that I do need every stop of dynamic range, that's when I'll start to use my a7R II. So clearly, if I didn't have my a7R II, I would buy this. If I didn't have the A9, I would have definitely bought the a7R III. But for me, not being a landscape shooter, I probably don't need to at this stage. But I'm quite comfortable with having the A9, the a7R II, the a6500 and the a6300, and my GH5. So I'm quite comfortable with that. The thing that really I'm hanging out for is 4K 60p, but that's just me because I shoot Fusion. So for me, it's an important thing. Now that I've started shooting 4K 60p on the GH5, I really do want Sony to bring that out, and I'm hoping they bring that out in a new a7RIII. I'm hoping that's available. But that's not taking away from this camera at all, guys. If you haven't got an a7R II, or that's the only camera you've got, it's a great price for what they're giving you. It is an amazing bit of technology here, and I would upgrade if I hadn't got the A9 for sure. But now that I've got the A9, I just don't think I need this at this stage. a7 III may be more interesting for me as a second backup camera, something like that at this stage, if they release that, guys. So Jimmy said, what? Just seeing this for the first time, a7 III, are you skipping the a7 III? Have you pre-ordered already, Mr. Osler? No, and I haven't. I just discussed that with you a second ago, guys. And I'll talk about lenses in a second, Michael, because I'm going to go to that in a minute, because I'm going to talk about the lenses that they're releasing as well. Rule said, tuning in from Jamaica, I just bought the a7R II a couple of weeks ago. Rule, don't worry about that. That's still a fantastic camera. Like I said, I'm going to keep mine. It might be that in 12 months' time, something like that, 2 years' time, you may want to upgrade to this new one. But clearly, the a7R II is still a great camera, guys. Don't get sucked in by thinking you have to upgrade. You don't. But it is a great camera, but you've still got an amazing camera if you have the a7R II. I still love my a7R II. Michael said, I totally agree, David. A9 has the best video, and it has. It's by far got the best video in the range. Please, Sony, give us the S-Log profiles and the touchscreen. I'm hoping that can all be fixed with firmware. David said, you need a house if the a7R III overheats. You know it will keep you warm during the cold nights. He's just laughed. Michael said, just have a good point, David. Rai said, I'm strongly considering selling my A9 for the a7R III. Well, there'd have to be a reason that you would want to sell the A9 for that camera. For me, there's no way on earth I would sell my A9 to get an a7R III. No way. That is still, I believe, the best camera in the market at this stage. The focusing on that camera is insane. The file size is perfect. It's just unbelievable, and I just adore that camera. There's no way I'm going to change that camera. I'm definitely keeping the A9, that's for sure. What else have we got? David said, it looks like it doesn't have the same shutter speed as the A9. Yeah, well, it won't. It's only going to have 10. It won't have the 20, obviously. They have to keep a difference, remember, guys. They can't give you an A9 in that body, or no one will buy the A9. There's no way it will have as fast focusing as what the A9 is going to have. It's probably going to be amazing, but it's still not going to be as good, I don't believe, as what the A9 will have. But we have to wait and see. They might blow it out the water, but I don't think so. The A9 has definitely got more points, I think. I think it had nearly double that many points. Michael said, the a7R III is everything I've ever wanted in a camera, but without the 4K 60. I know, I just wish they have to leave something, Michael, for the a7S III. They've got to do that, and that's why I think they haven't added that in there. Plus, I'm doubtful, to be honest, that they can put that in that size body. I think they're going to have to do something with the body if they're going to give you 4K 60 that will last for any period of time. So let's see what happens in that space. What else have we got? Thank you for the Sony news at almost 2 a.m. No flip out screen. I know hopefully the a6-700 is going to have that, Scott, so I'm hoping that's something they'll bring out with the a6-700. I'm sure that's probably going to have it in that camera. I'm hoping it does. Ollie said, morning, David. Good to catch you live again. Nice to see you here, Ollie. Michael said, hi, David. Keep up the good work. Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate you saying that. I just shared another video too today, guys, on the A9, so have a look at that video as well that I just shared this afternoon. Rai said, with the resolution and burst mode, I'm surprised they didn't add QXD and UHS2 slots like the D850. I think the issue is the body size. Right, they can't fit that into that size body. Those cards are big. So to fit that in that body size, they would have had to change the whole body size, and I don't think Sony want to do that at this stage. So I don't think that's really an issue. And look, having used the A9, it's not an issue using those SD cards. They're small, and I've never run out of the buffer on those things. And I shot a lot on the other day doing a dance work where people were jumping all over the place. It was a big concert that I photographed, and I never hit the buffer on that camera. So to me, it's not an issue. What else have we got? Michael said, I love my a7R II, but with these new upgrades and improvements, selling the kids, bye-bye kids. Just put them up on eBay. Look, if you've got the money, Michael, I don't blame you. It's just for me, I just can't justify it at this stage. But clearly, if you have the money, jump at it. It's going to be an amazing camera. What else have we got? Oreo said R3 is not going to be competition for the A9. The 24 megapixel size is better suited for reportage and weddings. The R3 can be a great partner for the A9 in weddings for the formal portraits. And that's the way I work. That is exactly the way that I work with my weddings. They're always, like I said, probably 80 to 90% is the A9, and then the other 10% is using the a7R II for those formal shots or the dynamic range. It is about a stop different in dynamic range, and this new one is probably going to be incredible for the dynamic range. So if landscapes obviously are important for you, this is going to be an incredible camera. It has to be also to shoot the HDR. What else have we got here? David said faster to sell a kidney instead of your kids. I think he's talking about his kids. His cameras are his kids, David. Is it just an upgrade like how the upgrade from a6RIII to the a6V? No, it's bigger than that, B&B Films. This is a pretty big upgrade. It's the same body, but it has a lot of extra features. This camera alone would be worth it if you have the money for the focusing. It's just like the A9 is worth it for the focusing alone. It's just incredible. So if this has similar focusing to that, it's a big enough upgrade just for focusing alone to get this upgrade. My rolling shutter in 4K be better due to the upgrade processor. Well, that has to be seen because I'm not sure how much they've upgraded that processor. I don't think the rolling shutter will be much better, to be honest, but that's just me thinking at this stage. Because they haven't used the A9 sensor, I don't think the rolling shutter is going to be that much of an improvement. It's not even that good in the a6500 either, so I don't think it's going to be that good. Michael said, not me, painless selling the kids. Lots of pain taking out the kidney. Ollie said, might be a good time to buy the a7R II for good pricing, though I'll still hold out a little longer for the a7 III and maybe the a7R II second hand for maximum bang for buck. And that's the thing, guys, if you are in for an a7R II, it's going to be a great time to be buying that camera shortly because clearly there's going to be a lot of people selling that to buy the a7R III, so it could be a great time to get it. And like I said, this doesn't make the a7R II obsolete. It's still an amazing camera. Like I said, I love my a7R II to death, so I'm not selling it at this stage. But clearly in 12 months' time, I probably will, and I'll probably sell that and get the a7R III. Like I said, if I hadn't got the A9, I might just have immediately bought the a7R III. I'm still hanging out too to find the a7 III as well, to see just what that offers. What else have we got? And the design is the same. Yes, it is. It's basically the same as the A9, though, looking at what they're saying with the joystick, dual card slots. It's got an USB in it. So there's a lot of upgrades in this camera. They've got a hell of a lot of upgrades in this camera. What else have we got? David said, true Michael P. Oh, he's talking about selling his kids again. Scott said, we're cursed, David. a7R III, just out 5 minutes, and we're thinking about the a7S III. I know it's funny. It cracks me up. It does make me laugh the way we all are, just gearheads. It does crack me up. But Sony, again, are innovating, guys, and this is it. That you can't say that Sony don't give you, and this is where people always say to me, and you hear this all the time, that the Sony haters always go out saying, yeah, but they upgrade their cameras too often. Big deal, you don't have to buy this camera. You do not have to buy this a7 III if you can't afford it. I'm not buying it immediately. I don't hate Sony because they've bought out an a7 III. I love the fact that Sony are bringing out all these cameras. Bring it on, I reckon, because the more things that they're releasing, eventually I'm going to buy it, and then they're going to keep giving you more and more amazing things. And this is a definite answer to the Nikon D850. What else have we got? What about overheating? Well, that has to be decided, but I don't think it's probably not going to have an issue overheating. They haven't added 4K 60p. I've never had an overheating with my a7R II, so I don't think that's going to be an issue with this camera at all. How much do you think the extra dynamic range over the 3 is worth over the 2? Well, if you're into landscapes, probably a lot. One stop of dynamic range makes a big difference. I can see there is definitely a difference between my A9 and the a7R II. So this is even probably a stop better than that. So this is going to be pretty amazing if you want dynamic range. I mean, it is going to be an incredible camera for recovering in shadows, that's for sure. Again, this is probably going to be like it'll one-up the Nikon D850, I'm sure of it. What else have we got here? David said, I actually meant the shutter speed of the A9 is 1/32,000th of a second. The A7R III is 1/8000. Yeah, but that's only mechanical, David. If you're talking about the electronic, they probably will add the same thing on the A7R III, I would think. But I don't think, like I said, it's not going to have that same sensor. They may not offer 1/32,000th of a second. We'll have to go to the specifications and see on the Sony site what they say about that. If anyone's checked it out, let me know in the shutter, because I do adore that feature in the A9, being able to go to 1/32,000th of a second. It means I can shoot 1.4 in bright sunlight, and that's a great feature to have. But again, I don't think the electronic shutter is going to be as good as the A9, so that may not be able to do that. You certainly, like I said, probably won't have, you'll have this rolling shutter issue. I think it won't be as good as the A9 is, because the sensor's not as fast. The only reason why the A9 can do what it can do is because that sensor is so fast. Gary said, good live catch. In the UK, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Good to see you here, Gary. It's great to be able to talk to all you guys from over in Europe for a change. Ben said, gotta go, mate. Chat soon. See you, Ben. What else? Michael said, no, I insist we sell both. He's talking about his cameras, that he's going to sell both. Rada said, does the A7R III have the option to use different RAW file sizes? I don't think they've mentioned that anywhere, having a light RAW. I don't think so. But we'll have to confirm that in the settings. Michael said, weddings for me, A9 and A7R III. Perfect combo, Michael. I agree with you. That will be an incredible combo. Like I said, I'm using the A9 and the A7R II is mine. So the A9, the A7R III will be even better. John said, thank you. Michael said, you said the same thing about the A9, David. I did say I wouldn't be buying the A9 and I bought it. He said, you'll be with me 30 days. $100 bet, gas cake, take control. I'm going to behave, Michael. I'm not going to buy it. I said that. I did say that last time. What else have we got? No knob on the left of the camera. You have to go into the menu. Yeah, it's not going to have those same features on the top of the camera, I believe. That is one big difference. And I do love those extra features on the A9 that you can set your focusing speed and things like that on the top. And also your continuous and single shoot modes and all that go from the top of the camera. So that's also a great feature on the A9. So no, I don't think that's going to be on this new body. I don't think the body's big enough. That's the issue. Remember, they haven't changed that. What else has it got here? Michael said, David, you should like a guy got an AA meeting in denial. He's saying I've got Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in denial. Give in. Stop it, Michael. I'm not buying it. B&B said, Films, how do you feel about the Profoto A1? I love it, B&B Films. I'm going to buy that when it's released for Sony. I am going to be buying that. I really like that flash. That flash with the A7R III would be amazing because it would keep up with that 10 frames per second. It would be incredible. Oreo said, one thing nobody mentions is the buffer. Buffer is the biggest problem in the R2. Yeah, but they're saying that it'll take 80-odd images, Oreo, so I don't think the buffer's going to be an issue on this camera. I would think that they would have added enough memory in this camera. Like I said, I've got a feeling, and we don't know until we see it released, obviously. I've got a feeling this is going to be like the difference between shooting the a6RIII and the a6500. There was a massive difference in the buffer. If they're giving you the ability to shoot that many files in camera, the buffer would have to be better. What else have we got? You will have it, David, believe me, Michael said. All right, now let me just go down because I'm going to look at these lenses. So let's scroll back because I'm going to see if I can get on to have a look at these lenses that were released. Let's see if it's in this section. Let me go back to where they are, because let me see if I can bring up another window. I'm going to see if I can find out where the lenses are. All right, let's have a look here. I'm just going to try and bring this window up because it looks like too that the Sony have also announced the FE 400mm 2.8 and they've also released the FE 24-105 and there's some other lenses as well. This is so slow. Everyone's obviously logging into all the Sony sites. You can't get in. Might have to, let me see if I can pull up. Oh, here we go. It's going in slowly. Yeah, because I think Sony have actually announced a number of lenses which are interesting, actually. Some of them are really good. They have announced the 400 FE 2.8. Gee, what are all the Sony haters going to start saying when Sony release a 400mm 2.8 lens? I mean, you know, shortly they're not going to be able to whinge about that, but they'll find something else. I mean, how many lenses does Sony actually have to have? It just does my head in sometimes. So they're saying here, did it come down and show any more? 400mm 2.8 lens. There's a Sony 24-105 f4 lens. I mean, what a great focal length that is. I mean, that's really an interesting focal length. That's like the 10-105 on the APS-C lenses. So that is a great focal length to have as a travel type lens. It is f4, but like I said, I never have an issue shooting f4 either. But they're two great lenses that they've actually got announced. They're not saying in here at the moment how much it costs. It's just they're saying that it's in development. But at least, and this is like I've said to people all along, that Sony will release the lenses. You just have to wait. Remember, it is still a new platform. When you think about the number of lenses that Sony have released in the short period of time that Sony have been around, I think they've done an amazing job. I think they've done a really good job, to be honest. How many lenses do people actually need? And this is why I always crack up from people from Nikon and Canon going on about, yes, but they don't have the lenses. How many lenses do you seriously need? I've got more than enough to run a successful portrait and wedding photography business for what I would ever use. And the only thing it lacks now, I believe, is the long focal length for sports. And now they are starting to address that in the fact that you'll be having shortly a 400mm 2.8. It's going to be incredibly expensive, but they're actually saying it's going to come summer 2018. So they are looking at those lenses, guys. So it is just a matter of time. This is why I laugh when people say there's no lenses. Sony probably has more lenses that you can use on the cameras than any other manufacturer. When you think you can use Sony, Nikon, Canon, Fuji, not Fuji, I mean Sigma, Samyang. You can use all these lenses on the Sony cameras. So basically what they say is mute. It's just crazy. That lens does interest me. The 24-105 is actually a really interesting lens if you wanted to have an all-in-one travel lens. They're saying they've now got totaling 23 lenses, which, like I said, when you think about it, is incredible for the amount of time that Sony have been released. And the other thing too is what you have to realise, Sony have future-proofed all those lenses, especially the G-Master lenses, that they're out-resolving the sensors that are actually there. That's not happening with Canon and Nikon. The G-Master lenses are out-resolving. I think they resolve up to 100 megapixel file sizes. So they have future-proofed those lenses for larger sensors that are coming out later on. So again, you know, it's going to be a great future, I think. I mean, you know, it's looking really good for what they've actually announced. So let's just go back to questions just for a minute before we close for the day, because I better go inside and just chill a little bit, I think. I need a wine after all this excitement. Mel said buffer is about 68 12-bit RAW files. Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Michael's given me a $10 donation for the a7RIII fund. I love it. What a crack up. You crack me up, Michael. Seriously. Mel says the buffer is about 68 12-bit RAWs, 28 shots, 14-bit RAW. And like I said, you're not going to need more than that if you're shooting this camera. This is not designed as a sports camera, guys. You're not going to be shooting this like you're shooting the A9. What else have we got? Question, is 42 megapixel is more than enough, or should we wait for a 5D SR2 or rethinking about the D850? Honestly, I sold all my Nikon gear, Tambi. I was a Nikon shooter, and I would never go back to a digital SLR after shooting that. I recently, if you follow my YouTube channel, you'll see that I recently shot with the 5D Mark IV. I hated it. I just couldn't stand it. I couldn't wait to get back onto my A9. Once you've used something like the A9 with all the features and the technology that are inside that camera, you just do not want to go back. Like I said, I came from Nikon and I sold that for all the features that I had. This is a far better, I think this is a better camera than that. Well, we shouldn't say that because it's not released yet, but I think they've answered everything that the D850 has, plus you've got the EVF. Again, I think that's the game changer. You've got true 5-axis stabilization in the camera. You've got the better video features. You'll definitely have better video focusing than what the Nikon D850 has. So if I had the choice, I'd be buying this over, say, the D850 for sure, just for future proofing. But that's just me personally. I'm not saying the D850 is a bad camera. It's not. It's an amazing camera. And everyone that's watched my YouTube lives will know that I say that that's a great camera. I'm not one for slamming manufacturers just to put the camera down. I think that is an amazing camera, but I think this, for me personally, is a better camera than the D850. I wouldn't be buying the D850 for my shooting. I'd be getting the a7RIII, especially if you're a landscape shooter and you like landscape and you like video. Mel said, the question is, will it flush those pics fast enough? Will it freeze some of the functions while it's flushing? And yeah, we're not going to know, Mel, until it's released. So that's something we're going to have to wait. The A9 is incredible. Like I said, I never have to wait on that camera. But they're not pushing 42 megapixel file sizes through that camera. So it's going to be interesting to see whether it does lock you out. Said the 24-105 is listed on pre-order at B&H for 1298. Oh, there you go. So that's fantastic. Like I said, that'll be a good travel lens. That will be a really good travel lens if you're dealing with full frame cameras. I love my 18-105 on the A6500 and A6300. That's one of my favorite travel lenses. So you've got these similar lens on the full frame now. Great. Rice said, several sources say the 24-105 is going to be around 1299. Mel said Sony will have to release a fast 400 or even 600mm. Why? Because Sony wants to be the best camera for the Tokyo Olympics in 220, and will most likely there'll be an A9 II by April 2019. And you're probably right, Mel, and I think that's definitely going to happen. It will happen. Like they've already said, the 400 next year. They'll again release something like a 600 after that as well. So, you know, and if you're talking about general lenses, we've got more than enough general lenses now to go by. So, you know, we've got the 70-200, we've got 2.8, f4 versions. We've got a number of 85s that you can use. We've got a number of 35mm, which is my focal length, best focal length that you can use. There's everything that, like I said, a normal, average wedding or portrait photographer could ever need. You've got more than enough lenses for what you can actually ever use. Roy said persistent. He's talking about Michael's donating for my A7RIII fund, I think. That cracks me up. What else have we got? Do we know if it'll be able to do 120? No, it won't. No, they won't give you that feature, I don't think. They're only saying 120p. So you're stuck at that. If you want to shoot 120p, you'd have to shoot at 1080p. I think the 4K will still be stuck at 30 frames per second or 24 frames. The best you'll get is 30p, I think, on the 4K footage on that. You're going to have to, oh, thanks, Tamby. You're going to have to basically get the new video model. They have to answer the GH5. They've got to answer that, Sony. So clearly there's going to be an A7S III released or something like that down that line, or an A9S. And it wouldn't surprise me now if they bring that out as an A9S, because they might do a professional sports camera model, and they'll also have a really professional high-end video camera that could be based the same way the A9 is, but it's basically just for video, and that's where you'll get the 4K 60p put in. I think that's the camera that that you're waiting on for video side of it. They're not going to give you those features in the a7RIII or even the A9. You're going to have to get a video camera to get those features. They're still giving you a really good camera though, video camera for that money. Like I said, I think that's probably one of the better video cameras out there for that, in the fact that it'll do 4K 30p. You're going to be able to do the full HDR video in the camera internal. I still don't think this is as good as the GH5 in video though, because the GH5 gives you more features than what this will give you. But I'm sure the next Sony is probably going to up the video side to it to at least compete with the GH5. But if you're after a camera that does both amazing stills and incredible video, this is going to be a great camera for that. The video is very strong on this camera, very strong. What else has said? When will the Sony a7R releasing? They're saying November, Stacey. So late November, I think. Michael said, with the a7R III, you can use your A9 grip. Yeah, well, you could. Well, I don't know, because the body size is different, Michael. So I don't know if it's going to be the same grip is it? Because I think the body sizes are different. We'll have to see on that one. Is the model number the same that they were saying before? We'll have to check that. M1 said, I own 2 primes for my A6500, the Zeiss 24 1.8 and the FE85 1.8, which together cover 95% of my shooting needs. There are about 50 great lenses that I don't even need. Definitely no shortage. And I agree, M. Wood. They're my favourite 2 lenses as well. I love the 24 1.8. That's my favourite lens on the A6500. I adore that lens, the Sony 24 1.8. It gives you a 35mm focal length, and it's a gorgeous lens. It's sharp, and the bokeh is beautiful. It focuses amazingly quick. It's fantastic. It's my favourite APS-C lens, and I love the 85mm. So I'm often using my 55 on the Sony A6500, but sometimes I will use the Batis on it as well. Stacey said, thank you, you're doing a great job. Thanks, Stacey. Mel said, I think an A7S3 is to respond to the GH5. Yeah, and I think that's what they're going to. That was the reason why I bought the GH5. I only bought the GH5 because I wanted something that would shoot 4K 60. I need that for my wedding work. Remember, I shoot Fusion. So for me, I still use my Sonys for video, though. I'm using my a7RIII and also the a6500. It's the a6500 now that I'm using for this. I wanted the 4K 60p, and I wanted something that I could just leave on and not worry about it overheating for the whole wedding ceremony if I had to leave it on for an hour. So that's why I went for the GH5. So the A7S3, they have to answer that camera in the 4K 60p and also the 400 megabits file sizes as well. So that's going to come. But again, if you're just a general video shooter, this is a very powerful camera, this new A7 III. I think the A7S is to respond to the GH5, but then again, if the A7S III is 3K, when that's a 1000 gap. Quite amazingly, the best to respond to the GH5 is the future A6700, and I think that's what's going to happen. That's why I'm waiting for the A6700. I think that is going to be incredible when they release it, because I'm hoping they'll give us a fold-out screen. I'm hoping it'll do 4K 60p, and I'm hoping that's the camera. I'll buy that in a heartbeat. So I'm hoping that comes out and they do answer the GH5, because they have to be in a similar price range, and that is in a similar price range. So yeah, I'm hoping that happens. I really do. Mel said the A6700 will be closer in price to compete with the GH5, but that model has to have good video features like the GH5, and it must improve on the IBIS and touchscreen. Yeah, the IBIS in the GH5 is incredible. Mel said, and the A6700 must solve the overheating problem as well, otherwise create a new line specific to a GH5 threat. And I agree, that's what they do have to use. The last video I put on just before this video, actually, if you check that out, that was filmed with the GH5. I used my A9 to do the stills, and I used the A7S A6500 on the gimbal to shoot the moving shots on the gimbal, but I did use the GH5 on the just to film in the background, so you can sort of see all those cameras working together. I do have to try and work out the color science though, and try and balance the images together, but it was just a quick shoot, so the exposure on the gimbal was a little bit under, so I did have to boost that in post. So I'm pretty confident I can match them a lot better than what that shows. So watch that and let me know what you think about that as well. Tammy said, is it 10-bit or 8-bit 422? Does it make a difference for you? Because I don't see any difference in GH5. Do we need to care about that much? And I don't think you do. I've shot 10-bit and 8-bit in 422 on the GH5, and to be honest, the difference is just not worth it. The file size jumps incredibly. I'm happy with just shooting 8-bit, so I'm not fussed any of these cameras if they just stay in 8-bit for me. If you're a full-on videographer, you may want to do it because it gives you better options grading if you really grade high-end and gradients in skies, things like that. If you're not doing that, this A7R III is ample for what you need. I wouldn't even worry about whether it's 10-bit or 8-bit 422. I don't think it matters at all. Well, that's going to be about it, guys. Please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. I'd love you to all join on board. And I also have a Facebook page too that's specially linked to people that follow me on YouTube that see all behind the scenes, and I carry on with more stuff than what I actually show live. Unlike a lot of YouTube providers, I do show an awful lot of shoots, and they're paid shoots. They're not free shoots, they're paid shoots. So what you're seeing from me when you see my shoots online is it's actually real paying clients. So unlike most most YouTube photographers who are just doing it with models and things like that. I'm actually showing you real live shoots. So what you're seeing is what the models get, and what the couples get. And I'm shooting weddings and all different things that I love to share with you guys. So please, if you can, like my video, like my channel, and get on board with us, because we have these live chats every week. What else? Mel said, though I know you only from your YouTube posts, I'm 95% sure you'll buy the a7RIII. Stop it, Mel. Oh, I'm going to get this all the time now. Oh, I've got to try and stop myself. It's I know I suffer from gas too, like anyone else. If Sony put out an a7S III with video like the A9, but with 4K 60 and the A9, AF game over. I know, that would be incredible, Michael. Imagine if they do that. If they bring out an A9S with a video focus of the A9, and I think that's what's going to happen. I really do think that's what's going to happen. And I think that's why they haven't released it yet. I think they're still developing that camera. And that's going to be a game changer once that comes out. You're going to have to pay for it, though. It's going to be $5,000 US, I reckon, or even more. Mel said, the a7RIII has USB-C, and if you tap into that with an external recorder, I'm sure it can do 422 10-bit. You're probably right. But if the a7RIII is not really made for video, for information, these are bonuses of the camera. And that's the thing, and I think it's going to be a great fusion camera, this a7RIII. Joanne said, I believe the only place that Sony is behind is weather sealing for extreme environments, although perhaps they have now addressed this. Exciting times indeed, and I agree with you, they are exciting times. I still probably don't think this body's going to be full weather sealed. It's not like my GH5 that I can take out in the wet. I could probably almost submerge that camera, it's so good. Sony do have to improve that, I agree with you. That's just a matter of time, though, before that happens. That will happen. Again, you've just got to give them time. All right, guys, well, we might call it a day there, because what is it here? It's 8:21 here. I'm going to go in and have a wine, I think, or something. And talk about try and convince myself that I'm not going to buy this new camera. So if you have any questions anyway about this camera, leave them down below and I will get back to you on it. I always make sure I answer everyone with questions. So please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It may not be tonight because I'm going to chill now for the rest of the evening, but I will answer you as soon as I get up tomorrow morning. Let me know whether you think that it's a worthwhile camera that you're going to buy, whether you're going to wait for the A9S or whatever that's going to be, or even the a7 III. So let me know about that as well, what you're going to do. So we might call it a day there, guys. I think I've been chatting for around an hour. I just wanted to make this a quick one. I can never shut up. That's the problem. I really appreciate you all chiming in, and I just love you guys, and thanks so much for following me, and I really appreciate it. So we'll talk all again soon, guys. So that's all for now, and good day from down under, and I'll see you all soon for my new videos. Bye for now.